We have a way of making really good defensive players look like the best of all time.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and we're going to call the Common Council meeting to order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sally, welcome.
Thank you.
If you can help us with the roll call, please.
Certainly. Alderperson Doug Saloga.
Here.
Alderperson Jim Barron is absent at the moment. Alderperson Jackie Valdi.
Here.
Alderperson Wayne Dean.
Here.
Alderperson Matt Grimmer.
Here.
Alderperson Kevin Maples.
Here.
Alderperson Tim Eicher.
Here.
Mayor Kent Atwell.
Present.
And Administrator Tom Hafner.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, the first order of business tonight is a public hearing on the proposed 2020 budget and tax levy. A public hearing on the proposed 2020 budget and tax levy will be held on Monday, November 4th, 2019, during the regular meeting of the Common Council. The meeting begins at 7 p.m. in the council chambers in City Hall, 500 Genesee Street, Delafield, Wisconsin, 53018. The proposed budget in detail is available for public inspection in the city clerk's office, at City Hall during normal business hours, and at the city website. So we'll start with citizen of Delafield comments pertaining to the public hearing item. Is there anyone that would like to come and speak to the public hearing item? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the public hearing? Seeing none, oh, we do have one. You guys were in line.
Laura Schultz, 935 Bar Road. I'm hoping that all of you read this that we paid for. I found it to be very informative. On page 1 of the report describes Lake Nagawicca as a high-quality lake with its largest tributary being the Bark River, supplying 3/4 of its water, and precipitation and groundwater and other tributaries supply the lake. The report identifies the Bark River watershed as a significant contributor of phosphorus and sediment into the Bark River, and gives recommendations within the report to help communities to reduce their pollution loading to meet and exceed set goals. The report found that sediment was scarcely present below the Merton Mill Pond, but thick sediment deposits were mostly found at the point where the river inlet to the lake is. Despite this, the Bark River is in good condition, with enough surrounding floodplain, extensive vegetation buffers, and few instances of bank erosion. So what is causing the problem for the health of the lake? One example is the lake shoreline has instances of shoreline bank erosion, that most of the shoreline lacked any vegetation buffers. This causes a direct drainage to the lake that contributes to more phosphorus per acre than upstream at the Bark River Basin. In order to reduce these levels of phosphorus and sediment, will require major commitment in deploying best management practices as stated in this report. These include shoreline riparian buffers, installing rain gardens, using cover crop and no-till practices, just to name a few. I encourage you to read the section in the report about restoring the natural hydrology in a changed landscape. I found it telling on how past practices of eliminating upland hardwood forests and the southern portion oak savanna, and how filling in wetlands, impervious surfaces, all have had a direct effect on the current condition of the lake. Nowhere in this report was there a call for dredging, but instead the report listed all the ways riparians and the city should invest in improving the conditions that will benefit the lake and alleviate these conditions currently found within the lake. It will take some rethinking of lake owners That manicured shoreline may look nice, but it does nothing to help control runoff, hold back sediment, or pollution. That is only achieved by shoreline, a natural shoreline. There are many lakes in Wisconsin, Mississippi is one of them, that already prohibit the removal of any native shorelines. The report lists information on help on improving the lake, and until lake property owners implement the recommended changes for good practices, the taxpayers of this city would only be throwing good money after bad, because dredging will not cure a bad lake's practices. I say it is in a different fund means little to me. All funds come from the same pocket, be it the city, state, or federal. It all comes from the same source, the taxpayers. I would also like to note that in the budget, I noticed a lot of new improvements to the city. We've done a terrific job the last 5 years with Highway C and paths and everything, but I see a lot of deterioration because of poor upkeep. One example is these crosswalks, pavers on Genesee Street are in deplorable condition, and there's nothing in the budget about maintaining those, and it should be. Cut out some of the new projects and let's do a little maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mike, you like to come up?
Mike Hausman, 3135 Sylvester Drive. I'm also here as the chair of the Lake Welfare Committee. So first on the operating budget for 2020, the Lake Welfare Committee has a line item of $26,911, which is about 0.4% of the general fund. Includes a lot of the things that Lake Welfare works on, peace management, weeds, and that kind of thing. When we add in the other components for lake benefits, such as the police patrol as well as weed harvesting, that total comes up to $104,500, or 1.6% of the general fund. Lake Welfare certainly supports these investments as it brings a great deal of value to the city. Now onto the capital budget. So again, we have $650,000 in for dredging the mouth of the Bark River. It keeps coming up because the issue does not go away. It is an issue regarding safety, navigation. We have worked significantly with SewerPAC, and that report was cited just a little bit ago in there, and it's not complete, and that's part of the problem. We've been working with them for the better part of 2 years now to complete this lake management plan. It'd be helpful if it was done, but it is not. But in there, to quote, a known navigational and safety concern. I don't think that dredging will be left out. It seems to me in the total report it was stated in there, and I think it will be in the final report. They also came up with some projected numbers regarding sediment deposit, and if you took those numbers and said, all right, based upon what would be done, the actual project cost would be about $550,000, about $100,000 less than what's in the budget. The numbers, again, aren't finalized, so we still have to work through those, but that's the best information we've got now. The Lake Welfare as a committee supports this being on the budget. We took a vote a couple weeks ago and it was unanimous, but to be fair, Alderman Maples was not there, so that vote doesn't necessarily represent his vote, but the rest of the committee was unanimous on it. As a practical matter, people are getting stuck there. It's a problem. The city's going to have to deal with it. I mean, we've got experienced boaters who get stuck there. This last summer, the police boat got stuck. Just Thursday, a person who works out on the lake for years, he runs a barge service. He got stuck there too for over an hour. We're talking a couple $100,000 worth of equipment. Stuck there probably about an hour or so. I mean, this is the expense that we're going to have to deal with. The fact of the matter is, this should have been dealt with years ago and still hasn't. It's not going to go away. Sooner or later, the city will have to deal with it. In closing, I guess I'm speaking for all citizens, I'd like to thank all of you for the hard work you guys do. Whether we agree or disagree, the city is a lot better off for everything you do for us, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else? Come on up, sir.
I'm Brian Van Horn, 3313 Lake Drive, longtime resident of Delafield. And I just want to echo a lot of what Mike was saying, that I strongly support the dredging initiative, and the figures I've seen, probably 90% of the silt that comes into the lake from Bark River comes from farm fields and other human-caused activity upriver. Only 10% of the silt is natural. It's the unnatural silt that's clogging up the Bark River inlet area. Lake Nagowick is a fabulous natural asset for the city, but it needs to be maintained. And I understand that about 30% of Delafield residents and 50% of the tax base comes from lake properties. So it's entirely proper for the city to spend some money on maintaining the lake. Bark River Inlet area, which is where most of the unnatural silt enters the lake and accumulates, is the area of the lake most in need of maintenance. So please consider the dredging funds as a necessary and proper investment for maintaining the natural health of the lake. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
All your comments are on the budget now?
Yes, on the budget. Any other comments on the budget? All right, seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. So we'll move on to item 1, City of Delafield citizens' comments for anything on or off the agenda. Citizens come.
John Riveras, 174 North Fieldstone Road, Delafield.
Josh Feith, 150 North Fieldstone Road, Delafield.
Dave Ziegler, 166 Fieldstone Road.
Hey, you guys are right around the corner. Yeah. Evening, everyone. Josh, David, and I are here representing the Coalition for Responsible Growth in Delafield. Been here with you once before, and just wanted to come back and quickly just make a few comments about the zoning ordinance changes in front of the board tonight that you're going to hear. As you know, we've worked quite a bit with Plan Commission and the work that they've done to get these ordinance recommendations to you, and been very close to it. The comments that we kind of want to just talk through tonight regarding in support of Tom Hafner's letter regarding the budget of October 17th, and in that budget process, there was talks about how we got to the situation that we're in, and you all are more educated than we on many of the pieces. The one piece that we just wanted to talk to was around the role that positive economic development plays in keeping the ecosystem of a city like ours strong and happy. And we see the ordinance changes that are before you now helping our long-term success as a community and as a city from an economic development perspective. We understand, as stated in Tom's note, that economic development is not going to get us out of this hole that we're in quickly, but we can only imagine where we would be today if we had started this thinking 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and we're at a place of something of stronger than we are today. We believe that, as the letter states, that the city does have a reputation of being difficult to deal with from a development perspective, and that has hurt us from people looking at our city and community to come in and do positive, sustainable economic development. This is not development for development's sake, but development for the community, for the citizens, and to help us fiscally as a community. We all know if you're not growing, whether a community or yourselves, you're dying, and we see that as we've said before. So we just wanted to come before you and let you know that we support the zone ordinance changes that are recommended. We believe that they're good for the city. We believe that they bring clarity to people who want to look at developing in our community. And it, I think, also brings clarity for the Plan Commission, Common Council, to be able to look at these things and look at them objectively, and so we can get a process going where people don't think that it takes a year to get going. We were talking earlier today, we started the coalition almost a year ago, last December, to support economic development, and we're here a year later, and no shovels in ground yet, but we're getting closer, so we're feeling good about it. So thank you for your work, and just want to let you guys know that we do support this development and these changes, and think they will help our city long term. Good?
That's it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. Are there any other citizens' comments for items on or off the agenda? Any other citizens' comments?
Good evening. Jim Zahorik, 1948 West Shore Drive. I'm here to address one of the ordinances that is being proposed to be changed, and that is number 755, maximum building height. It's 17.39, parent 18, parent L. And we're in this situation because a property was sold and the new buyer wishes to put up a large building, which is anyone's right. However, we do or did or currently have existing maximum heights in our zoning code. And it allows for you to exceed that height of 35 feet if you start to set the building back in the CBD1 district. So every foot that you go up, you move back 2 feet. As we look at the proposed zoning change, the setback now shall not be less than 20 feet, which is a step in the right direction. All we have to do is go to Oconomowoc to see what it's like driving down a tunnel on Highway 16 through the city, where these large buildings are right at curbside. Part of the rationale behind the 55 feet is that they're not the first people doing this. I refer to the Hendricks Group. That Bob Lang already has a building of that stature. Yes, he does. And it's 67 feet west of the property line on Genesee. So it doesn't hit you when you drive into the city or out, because it's set back. Now, there's full concurrence from the Planning Commission, what they submitted to you. And I grant you that, as I said, it's a step in the right direction, that for new construction in the CBD1, you can't be closer than 20 feet to the lot line on the collector and arterial streets. But if you're going to exceed 35 feet, or shall we say 40, would it not be appropriate to set it back another 20 feet? It's the way our city is laid out. Drive down Genesee and look at the different buildings. The taller they are, the further back they are. It gives you an open feeling, not shut in. And it's very easy for you as a council to refer this back to the Planning Commission to add one more article under C, that for buildings exceeding 45 feet, they shall be set back 40 feet versus the 20, which would give you that situation of a grade or a visual grade towards the larger buildings. Another concern I have is parking, and that's been addressed, and I'm very happy that the Planning Commission has taken that initiative, that if you're going to go, because our old ordinance was 3 floors and that's it. Now, if you add a 4th floor, the exception, you have to provide parking spaces, and this they're going to accomplish underground. So I think that's great. But I would certainly look at the setback, that if you're going to go from 45 feet to 55 feet, move it back another 20. Concerning yep, I guess that's it. I thank you for your attention. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your comments. All right, any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? We're getting in the habit of the second call. I'm glad you made it.
Good afternoon. Tom Buttram, 3201 Sylvester Drive. Speaking in favor of dredging. I think the sewer pack gave you a lot of data, but I think a real-life example would be kind of nice to hear. So my dad is 7 feet tall. I want you guys to think about that, 7 feet tall individual. We had something floating in the lake, and he had to jump in and go get it. It was his choice to jump in, but a 7 foot tall man jumping into that lake and needed a rope thrown out to him to get brought back in because the muck was so deep and so thick. So if it's a 7 foot person or a 4 foot child or a cousin or a relative, it's a public lake. Anyone can go on it. If you don't know where you are, you can't navigate around it. That's a real life example to me that said it's a safety concern more than anything. So you can have all the data you need, but until something happens severely, maybe that'll make a decision a little bit more easier to make. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, committee reports. Licenses, any report on that? Seeing none. 3B, Planning Commission. Mr. Eicher,
All right,
you have your work cut out for you today.
I do. So let me start with just a review of some of the items that aren't on our agenda specifically for action tonight because they're noteworthy. One is, and this is just actions we took, they're in the minutes that will be published, but because of the proximity of these meetings, they're not in our packet. Century, much like Pick and Save, applied for and received permission for the business plan to allow for their call-in, drive-through, or drive-up pickup to include alcohol sales. So that's been in Delafield already, but that was discussed. Also, as we know, Milwaukee Street Traders is no longer here, but Blue Collar Coffee, who's taking their place, is got their business plan of operation approved. So we look forward to them filling that gap. And Soulfire Art Studio, although they were only on our agenda for a signage update, if you notice, they're doing wonders with renovating the building just a block from here. And if you haven't heard of them, don't know what they do, look them up, patronize them when they open. It's a pretty neat place. Indigo Collective is a new business that opened up a yoga studio. And Hendricks Properties gave us gave us, agreed to an extension for their conditional use or for their business plan and their application for a new building across the street at the old BP site, which we also accepted. Another big thing that's going on is due to ongoing legal debates that are in the courts back and forth. The Heartland Sportsman's Club ruling mandates that the city issue a conditional use permit for them to resume operation as we're appealing the decision. And so we're discussing that. One interesting, so look at the news, look at the minutes and that on how that's going along. But one thing that's really interesting and somewhat challenging for the group is that we're not hearing new testimony and new information. We're treating this as though it's the application as existed, and we're judging things on the information that was provided for their initial application back then. So it's an interesting conversation and process we're going through, but we're going through the response to the courts and making that happen.
And I'll just throw in there, the gun club did come and did represent themselves at the planning commission meeting, which was a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we'll go on to the other items that are here for action. And one is the amended conditional use permit for University Lake School. It's item 3BI. And this was recommended by Plan Commission unanimously. It's the construction of a nature study classroom that is a very innocuous impact on what their footprint is, and it's a good cause. So I'll make a motion to approve item 3BI for the conditional use permit for University Lake School.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay, the next one, this first one here, ordinance number 754, is unrelated to the CBD 1 issues, which a couple of people spoke to. And this, we did get a correspondence in our email from City Hall regarding some of the backstory. This has been an issue that the city's been working on for about a year.
Over a year.
Yeah, and it's been drawn to our attention for much more than that. Anyone who's applied for permits for construction on the lake or bought a house thinking they could do certain things with certain conditions on the lake, it has to do with floor area ratio and how construction occurs and is measured on lakefront properties.
Any property.
It's any property in the city. It's typically come to the forefront with lakefront properties. But essentially what it is you're limited to a certain floor area ratio on several of our zoning zoning categories. And there's an inherent flaw in it as far as there's some ambiguity in how it's measured based on your exposure for your basement level in particular. Also for attic space and different certain size exposures of whether or not it's a utility room, height, finished quality of the interior. And it's been a problem for a building inspector for a long time.
A long time.
And so we've gone through the process to redefine what the definitions of livable space are. And as a result, when you do expansion or you build a new building, if you've got the potential for an exposed basement, it's getting accounted for at the time that the building's being put in place. And as a result, we're increasing the amount of floor area ratio for each building by approximately 25% across all zonings where this applies. It doesn't increase in some cases it actually decreases the size of a structure for people trying to accommodate a certain living area. And this was a combined effort from city staff, including the building inspector, the city planner, the mayor, different citizens. It's adding a bunch of clarity and eliminating ambiguity, and that's kind of a theme through all of these changes. But so if you look at the fact that we're increasing your ability to have floor area on zoning, It's actually holding you accountable for your potential to have that floor area based on exposures and what's built into the frame of your house. So it's not punitive, it's just simply letting people exploit the construction that they have to what it should be. So I don't know, does that make sense to everybody? I don't want it. So what I handed out here is zoning by zoning, and I'll just simply with the statement that ordinance number 74 for floor area ratio, it's expanding at approximately 25% across zoning codes RL1, RL1A, RL2. Those are residential lake properties. And then also for the residential inside the city, which is R1, R1D, R2, R3, R4, and the St. John's R5A, which all have this floor area ratio restriction in it, and we're just expanding it so that when you're dealing with basements and attics, you're held accountable for that potential for space inside your house. So, any questions? Surprisingly none. You guys did your homework. I appreciate that. So, I mean, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 754 regarding floor area ratio.
Second. Any discussion? I just have one thing. I kind of said it before. I just want to say it again. I want to thank everyone that participated in this. We've been working on it for a long time. We had a lot of tweaks throughout the process, and it took a while to get it done, but I think we got it done right in the end. And it's to everybody's benefit. The buildings will remain roughly the same size they were before. It's just clear that what you build, you can finish. Right. But that was not the case in the past.
Correct.
Right? So, again, thank you for everybody that participated in that. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Passes.
All right. So next one is item 3B2, or II, depending on how you count.
Actually, 3B3, right?
3B2, ordinance number 754, municipal code amendments.
This one you just did.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3B3. Okay, correct. All right, so this is what has been spoken to by a couple of citizens' comments. What I handed out here is, so this is ordinance 755. This regards maximum building height, and this is something that, let me just state the differences in the code that's being proposed. The one that's current reads, maximum building height, a principal building is limited to 35 feet if averaging, 45 feet maximum ridge height for gable, gambrel, hip, and pitch roofs. And B, accessory building is 15 feet, 25 feet maximum ridge height for gable, gambrel, hip, and pitch roofs. And that no building may exceed 3 floors above grade. And what's proposed here is changing essentially the principal building height as stated in section A, and that is the maximum height for a principal building shall be 55 feet. And what's happening is we're eliminating the interpretation of how you measure height for gable, gambrel, hip, and pitch roofs. And we're also adding an exception for when you add a 4th floor for parking spaces, also minimum height setback for arterial and collector streets for Genesee, Milwaukee, Main, and Wells Street shall be no less than 20 feet. The following ordinance should be taken in consideration together with this one, and that is that with building height, with that interpretation of eliminating how you handle pitch roofs and these different angles, and that that we're excluding CBD1 from allowing increases in height for any reason. So it's just point blank, 55 feet is the maximum downtown. If you think about it right now today, a pitched roof, well, if you set it back, you can get to 55 feet right now with a pitched roof downtown. And different buildings appear pitched, and sometimes there's flat roofs behind them, and there's a facade, and there's flat roofs behind them. We're trying to get away from all those different interpretations and make it point blank and easy enough to interpret so that you can come to the plan commission or the city with an idea for a building and not have a negotiation take place as far as what our ordinance mean. And that's clearly what happened across the street with Delafield Square, where although it is set back far from the road, it is extremely close to different lot lines, which violate existing ordinances if we were to apply them today. And we were trying to look at the success of that particular building and give the city latitude to say, let's apply something more simple that is less open to interpretation and more simply a matter of meeting or not meeting the ordinance. So, I don't know, any questions as far as what I've said so far? So this has been a process that's gone on since about March. We started discussing this, and we arrived at, through consultation again with city staff, plan commission, went back and forth, and there's been different amendments in the discussion over time. And it seems like a very reasonable way to accommodate buildings that have proven to be successful in the past and increase setback if you're intending to build above a certain level and add a fourth floor, as well as require parking where none is required now if you're going to build a building of a certain size and occupancy rate. So,
Tim, I have a question. In the original code, CBD 1, the setback is 0, isn't it?
It was 0.
So there is no setback.
There was no setback. This
Right,
code
so-
requires a setback on
Right.
2 types of streets,
I
right?
think that's an important thing to note
Yeah.
as we have this discussion. That leaped out at me anyway, because the setbacks, I think, will take the impact of something that's right up against the street.
that was one of the major discussion points around that, is the fact that our current code requires no provisions for parking and no provisions for any setback on structures built in CBD 1. And so this, if you're looking at adding a certain density by occupying a 4th floor, we are applying with this ordinance update I shouldn't say harshest, the most beneficial for the city and maybe the most expensive to the developer, or heaviest requirement for adding parking spaces on their own property if they intend on occupying a 4th floor. And if you read it, if your 4th floor might be just intended for storage, if it's clearly going to be supporting the other businesses, we're taking the largest floor area of any single story and requiring 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is, like I said, as stringent of a parking requirement as we can have. And if you talk to business owners downtown and even people that visit from out of town or in town, one of their concerns is, where do we park? So that is one thing that's built into this.
So Jackie, just to be clear, you still can do 0 setback if you're 3 stories or less. It's only if you go to 4 stories that the setback
Yeah,
is...
I'd love to see a setback and everything, so. I think the concern is with the height, so if you're going to go with the height, then to insist on the setback, I think that's I just think it's cleaning up what was very messy, and what has appeared to me in my simple way of understanding it is that sometimes we played with some of those heights. They were more than 3 stories. And so putting the language in here more precisely, and if you're gonna go above the 3 stories, then you need to have a setback. I think that helps a lot. So thank you though for clarifying that.
I think it's clean, I think it's smart, I think it advances the city's downtown, and I'd just like to say thank you to the Plan Commission and Tom and Kent and Tim and all the hard work, because I wasn't able to make it to every meeting, but they were long and they were arduous, and you guys did a great job.
All right, any other?
Someone needs to vote.
I will make a motion to enact ordinance number 755 regarding CBD1 building height.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? Passes.
All right, ordinance number 756, as I mentioned, this excludes CBD1 from any increase in elevation beyond what's stated in the zoning code for its particular designation. So I'll make a motion to enact ordinance number 756.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. All right, we'll move on to C, Lake Welfare Committee. Mr. Maples.
We had a meeting on October 9th. Actually, it was a very good meeting, a long meeting. Chief Eric Kroll, I hope I said that right. Kroll? Kale, okay. Made a presentation. First thing we talked about was the sewer pack watershed survey. And it was noted that on the presentation, phosphorus and sediment were the two issues that were brought to the surface. One of the Lake Welfare Committee members also added that plant life in a lake was also something to consider, which I'll touch on a little later. Chairman Hausman stated that he'd follow up with the final copy and stated sewer pack did have to wait for feedback from the DNR. There was discussion pertaining to the Welcome to the Lake program. Lake Committee member Tillis stated that he intended to have the whole packet together for review by the next Lake Welfare meeting, which is on November 13th. The focus overall was to try to provide information that will be useful and accurate to people who have never lived on the lake. So any new residents that come would be able to use this information. The main portion of the night, again, was by the chief about the 2019 City of Delafield Place Lake Patrol. Chief Eric discussed boat operations specifically related to the two officers that had been added in 2017 as the addition to the city police staff greatly impacted boat patrol. The patrol hours had increased since 2016. This year there were 657 hours of boat patrol, which was a significant increase. Chief stated that the training and staffing was a likely reason for the increase. He expected the number to remain stable unless there was a downward shift in staffing level due to budget changes. He also noted the increase in contacts and citations, then explained that DNR reporting had changed for warnings and they no longer could track verbal warnings and must be issued a paper warning. There was a drop in the warnings due to this change in 2018, but in 2019, the officers were more comfortable with the process, hence there were more. He then explained that the warnings can be issued on the water, but citations cannot be handwritten. They must be processed in the office, then issued, which makes the process more complicated. The Lake Patrol was staffed almost exclusively as an overtime assignment. Chief stated that overall, as an agency, the patrol was doing what the residents and visitors want, which is a good job of patrolling the lake and making sure that it was a safe, fun environment for everybody. He noted that there'd still be incidents out of their control, but in the past few years, overall, it's been a success. He stated that the purpose of the patrol is to make sure that things are safe, not to produce revenue. Next item was the Lake Welfare Committee webpage and Lake Management webpage for the City of Delafield. It was noted that there are several broken links on the Lake Management and Lake Welfare Committee pages. Chairman Hausman stated that the website should have two purposes. One is to get basic information quickly. The second is being able to dig deeper if a person wants more detailed information. This will be reviewed further by Lake Welfare Committee members. There was a discussion concerning starry stonewort and testing in Lake Nagawicca or Nagawicca Lake. Currently, there hasn't been any found in the lake, but there's surrounding lakes in the area that do have it. It was stated that the plant doesn't grow where weeds are, but will take over places where there are no weeds. It was suggested that there be information at the launches so people can look for this on their trailers before launching and make sure that they don't have it. Lastly, a discussion and possible action regarding alternatives to dredging the mouth of the Bark River. It was suggested that we would table this until after the budget was voted on. And again, the next meeting is November 13th at 6 o'clock.
Great, thank you. I just want to add on that starry stonewort, there's no known method to kill it. So once it's in your lake, it's going to be there till some new chemistry comes along forever. So it's one of those ones we really got to try to keep out of the lake. It's an invasive species, and it could change over time the quality of the lake. So it's a real important one that we do our due diligence on as best we can.
And Kevin, regarding those broken links on the website, if you just want to let the Lake Welfare Committee members know that if they identify a broken link or something, just shoot an email to our city clerk and she can get those fixed.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for the report. D, Park and Rec Commission, Mr. Grimmer.
Park and Rec had a meeting a week or so ago. A couple highlights from the meeting. There were donated sculptures. There was discussion on where to place those sculptures. That discussion is ongoing. I would refer you to the minutes. The second item is there's the general consensus on Park and Rec is that the plaza by the Bark River, by the dam, looks great after the refinishing, and there's all the people said amen, and we're very happy with that long process coming to an end. A sidebar to that is the naming of that plaza continues to be on Park and Rec agenda, and we are looking for input if anyone wants to throw a name into the ring. Please do so. And lastly, a subcommittee has been developed, or was developed in the spring to have discussions with St. John's Northwestern Military Academy about easements along the north side of the Bark River between Cushing Park and Liberty Park. Those discussions are going to resume. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, E, Public Works, Mr. Dean.
No meeting next, or no report. Next meeting is this Wednesday night.
Thank you. F, Delafield Commission.
Well, although we did not have a meeting, we had all sorts of ad hoc conversations based on the sewer main break last week, if you saw on the city's website, and that is wrapped up. And so those of you who weren't involved or know about it, there was a sewer main break, a forced sewer main on the east side of the lake on Mariner Drive. That was noted to have an issue. Scott Luzak, the general manager of Delhart, was on site almost immediately, called me right away, the chair, and shortly after he gave me an assessment of the situation, I talked to the mayor and Tom Hafner. And so the chain of communication worked really, really well. The county was involved right away, and the DNR was involved right away. Everyone that needs to know was notified, and it got wrapped up early in the wee hours of Thursday night, Friday morning. So I don't think Scott slept much, but he and his team coordinated a big effort. They did yeoman's work to get the thing resolved. And anyone interested wants to know what it was, if you haven't heard, it's a 40-year-old pipe. They're supposed to last about 70. We've don't know that this has ever happened anywhere around here before, but the root cause was, after they did excavation repair, was a rock that had worked its way next to the pipe and just moved back and forth over time, and time won, the pipe lost, and cost lots of money. We fixed it, no one was out of service. We did have effluent that should belong in a sewer end up in the lake to the tune of thousands of gallons. We'll get final reports out. But like I said, the DNR was on site to assess the damage, and we have lab work and reports due, and Scott and I will be at the Lake Welfare Committee meeting next week to just answer questions and hopefully have more information to make public then. So if you have any questions, show up or keep in tune with the newspaper. It's a rare event where I'm proactively reaching out to the media to tell them what's going on. Usually they're on me. There's a lot of back and forth, so I appreciate their help too. So,
and I'd like to jump in on that because it also was in the notify me part of the daylight policy. It was perfect because it was something that, you know, if you sign up for that, it was a message that was sent out. So folks who were concerned could find out right away. So yay, it worked.
Not that anyone would be using them in this weather, but I assume the beaches are closed.
If you want to, if you're going to have something like this happen, timing was impeccable. There was lots of rain, lots of water running through the lake, and no one was in the water. So, you know, and the term was there's no fins up, which means no dead fish sighted. But there's some reporting that needs to be done and some testing. So we'll have, as results come in, they'll be posted on the city website if they're relevant, and so there's nothing to hide, so we'll figure it out. But it's unfortunate, but it's plumbing, right? So, and that's it for Delhart.
Great, thank you for the detailed report and the due diligence yourself on helping that process.
Hope to never have to do it again.
G, Police Commission, Mr. Sloga?
No meeting for the Police Commission.
Alrighty, we'll move on to H, Library Board, Ms. Valdi?
We had a meeting, a while ago, October 8th. And we didn't meet later in October, so I didn't cover some of the information. You can find the minutes, I believe, online, Stephanie. But there were a few things. We have had a lot of success this summer with our zoo passes, and they continue to be very popular. And there's discussion about maybe increasing that and looking at some other places that families can go. It's been very successful. A couple of things I wanted to mention is that there's a conference coming up that is a Public Library Association. A couple of members of the staff are going to be attending, in particular because we need to work with the use of our space and how we can more efficiently use it. And I think that's it's hard to redesign, and they're going to take advantage of that. There were a couple of neat things. There's so many events. I would encourage people to go to the public library website because it is loaded with calendar events, including last week, Incredible Bats on the 30th. I happen to be a fan of bats. It was Bat Week. And we have a memory cafe. They have an event coming up this November for folks who are looking for recommendations on tech-related gift giving, which I think is just really neat. I think our library is sort of the flagship of the city in that it really is right out front and center with a lot of great things to make our community more cohesive. And our library does it in spades. It's wonderful. So check the website, and our next meeting is a week from tomorrow, right here.
Great, thank you very much. Move on to I, Zoning Board of Appeals. Mr. Barron's not here. So we'll move on to J, Promotion and Tourism. Mr. Sloga?
Yeah, the last meeting was October 8th. Two main topics of that meeting were the budget, which took a long time, of conversation of how they wanted to position the budget, which they approved. Since the budgetary meetings we've had, they actually have another meeting tomorrow morning to discuss and reopen the conversation about the budget per some of the workshops and other conversations with Tom and the mayor. So there's another meeting tomorrow morning. The other major topic was discussed was the plan for marketing with Z2 Marketing next year, which they use as a third-party marketing organization. With the two big events coming down the pipe, the DNC convention and the Ryder Cup, how best to focus around those events, and there's conversations, what are the best vehicles to drive attendance of those events, and what are the time frames. There are conversations in the commission about maybe there's some activity on a marketing perspective that the commission or some of the other employees can do outside of the contracted work, serve some efficiencies and costs. Nothing that has been determined there, just conversations. They did hand out over 5,600 visitor guides since April, which is over budget, and they are planning on doing a reprinting, although they didn't approve that. And they also handed out over 1,000 hiking and biking guides, which they're looking at doing another printing. So I think they felt both of those were successful offerings. And the meeting ran long, so there are other topics that were deferred. And there's a specialist from the state that's going to come and talk about the new law at the next meeting, which is not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday, about conversations of how budgets could be used within the rules of the new law. So there's encourage anyone to go to that meeting as well, if anyone's interested. And the last topic was the building. I think the Tourism and Promotion Committee wants to create a relationship, a more formalized relationship with the city in regards to lease the building at 421 Main Street. I know that we've had a lot of conversations about that as well. So that'll be something that will be addressed probably in the coming months as well with the city.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to K, Lake Country Fire and Rescue. No information I'm aware of. L, Lake Country Fire Board, Mr. Grimmer.
We had a meeting a week or so ago. Nothing too dramatic. Revenues and expenses are fairly consistent with budgeted amounts through September. There was an engine that's in the shop until December from Station 3. And part of the insurance benefit is the insurance will pay $200 a day. So the thought was we could lease back the city's truck. Or, sorry, rent it back.
The city's truck we were trying to sell.
City's truck we were trying to sell. So that's to the tune of
Put
maybe...
a sign on it and we'll drive around and advertise.
Yeah, for sale. So that's encouraging. That could result in about $6,000 through December. Through November to December. Maybe those repairs take a little bit longer.
Tell them to take their time.
Yeah, exactly. Find something else wrong.
Great,
Other than
thank you
that,
very
no report.
I'm sorry, is that
Nope,
it?
that's it.
Great, thank you. You're up again on Tree Board.
Tree Board. Tree Board. One of the agenda items that I put in there was a discussion on tree bags, and our city forester has been investigating something called a tree diaper. While tree bags can be somewhat effective, they do have to be filled, but tree diapers do not. And the whole point of the conversation was to decrease the burden on DPW in terms of watering trees if there is a drought, or filling tree bags, et cetera, et cetera. These tree diapers cost roughly $60 each, 50 to 60. So that is definitely an option moving forward if everyone is in agreement. The second topic was the Champion Oak on the corner of 93 and 84 next to the Chick-fil-A. And I was very pleased to know that there are folks out there. We actually had 3 people, if you include Jackie, who kind of showed up, stepped up, and were looking to address the buckthorn that was growing underneath that tree. So it was the prairie enthusiasts who came to the meeting who offered to clean it up. But little to their knowledge, little did they know that The McAllisters.
Right. It hasn't been completed. I double-checked it. It
No,
will
please.
be, the date is middle of November. So it's coming up this month. The buckthorn will be removed and the tree will be pruned by.
At the expense of the McAllisters, who contracted with
Wachtell Tree Science.
Yep. So we've got a lot of people looking out for that big old oak.
And just to comment a little bit further on that, what's happening is the complete under canopy is covered in buckthorn underneath the tree, and so that creates a problem where the buckthorn takes up the water and the nutrients that it would otherwise go to the oak tree. So getting rid of the buckthorn would then make the water and the nutrients more readily available to the oak tree.
There was a little discussion on who actually owned the.
I believe it's on the Chick-fil-A
So who had
property.
the right to intervene? Not that anyone should object or would object, but.
It's very clearly on the Delasota Chick-fil-A property, and Carol McAllister understands that and has been in contact with the owner of that property regarding permissions to do what she wants to do.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, she's a very careful person.
That's all I have.
Great, thank you very much. All right, and Deer Management, Mr. Dean again.
We have 177 volunteer hunters who have registered for 436, 172 in the AM and 321 in the PM. Those sets have resulted in 43 deer harvested so far, 30 of those does, 13 bucks, which for all hunters who have participated, we're at a 34% success rate for the hunters, which is pretty good considering the state rate for licensed bow hunters is 41%. So we're right there at those numbers. We are well ahead of our goal. Our goal is to have 40 from the city stands, 50 from the private landowners, and 50 from the sharpshooters. So we are significantly ahead of our goal.
And we're ahead of last year as well?
Since we didn't start until November 21st. 43 ahead.
That's right. Well, you got to take credit for that. Well ahead of last year.
So we're doing very well. So I'm really just wanted to thank all those landowners who've allowed us to go on their property and also the hunters who have volunteered. Thank you.
Great.
I have a question, Wayne. I did get a concerned citizen call, and it was regarding why the cities enacted this law or these procedures that are different than other municipalities. And I assured them that we are merely in compliance with state law and coordinating an effort as opposed to letting it organically occur and maybe not be as organized. Am I correct in that? We don't have unique laws for our city.
No, we're
as far
following
as
the
bow
state law.
hunting
We are actually stricter than the state laws.
Okay.
For example, I require that all the hunters shoot from an elevated position, which is more than what the state says. Just to participate in ours, it's not a law, but if you want to participate in our program, you have to shoot from, and all of our city stands that we have are all tower or tree stands at least 12 feet high.
Okay.
So we're shooting always toward the ground. So
Which is a safety benefit.
right, we're actually, I think that we're a little bit safer than some of the other municipalities. We are a model program. The DNR came out and interviewed both myself and Ron Troy, the village chairman or the town chairman for Delafield, and we are the only municipality that's co-sponsored together the kiosk, the drop-off for the CWD. So the DNR is trying to make us a model program for other cities and municipalities to follow.
As they should.
Good. I just
good to know,
I knew the answer, but I wanted to clarify that we didn't invent a new law. We're complying with a state law as a core of it. And, okay. All right. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. For unfinished business, we have none. Mayor's report. Mayor does not have a report. 6, new business. A, discussion and possible action regarding Resolution 2019-10, an authorizing resolution regarding the City of Delafield's Clean Boats, Clean Water Project grant application. Mr. Hafner.
Yeah, this is a resolution required to apply for this grant. It's a relatively small grant. The grant would provide $3,000 out of the city's, out of the $4,000 that the city spends on having a part-time employee at the launch for limited hours. The purpose of the program is to perform boat inspections to watch for invasive species such as the starry stonewort, and also to provide public education so that people can be aware of the issues when we don't have an inspector present.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further?
Who was the second?
Kevin.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Move on to 6B, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance number 757, an ordinance repealing and recreating section 9.027B2 of the Municipal Code of the City of Delafield, Waukesha County, Wisconsin, related to bows and arrows and crossbows. Who's going to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take it. This is an issue that Alderman Eicher realized that we had some inappropriate wording in one of our ordinances. When we passed the ordinance, it said that, well, let me start by saying, under state law, there's two things that municipalities can regulate. One is we can say that there's no shooting allowed within 100 yards of a structure unless you get permission from that owner. And then number two, we can require that all bow and arrow shooting is done shooting down into the ground. Before, when we had the down into the ground, we also had the additional language that said, or shoot an arrow such that you make sure that the arrow leaves the property and goes into the neighbors. I think it was intended to say does not leave the property, but in any event, we're proposing to shorten the language such that it just says that you need to shoot down into the ground.
So we're just cleaning this one up.
A little cleanup.
Any questions on that?
Yeah.
You know, I was involved in some of that language, and there was back and forth. It's much easier to interpret knowing that we're just saying, if you're shooting the arrow, it better hit the ground as opposed to any other unknown destination. I think it's simple and clean.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I will second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Great. On to 6C, opportunity for council to discuss proposed 2020 budget, tax levy, and public hearing comments. Is there anyone that would like to discuss any of those topics, or we can move on?
Yeah, some years there's no comments from the council, other years there is a desire to discuss. From staff's perspective, especially if you're looking for any additional information that would help you in your budget deliberations, you can let us know that tonight or in the coming days if some things come to mind. Give us a call and let us know. But ideally, if you could give us more than a few days advance warning, that would be appreciated.
The only request is the department head email that we talked about at the budget workshop of potential cuts that you're going to distribute.
Correct, that's going to be coming.
Thank you.
Was there a deadline on that or timeline? We're going to get that before the upcoming budget discussion?
You will get that before the upcoming budget discussion.
Action, okay.
Yep.
And we also had and it was a public meeting as well, but in the workshop, there was a request for some historical numbers on,
yeah, we got a request
tax
for
raises and what we were below the levy, above the levy, I mean limits and all, not above, but
So
how far below where we were.
The two requests that we're aware of is what would our levy be if we would have always levied the full amount? And then what our tree fund is at. Those are the two that we're aware of.
Okay, thank you.
If you have additional ones, let us know.
I will.
All right, we'll move on. 7A, Administrator's Report.
Two things real quick. Just to echo Doug's comments, Tourism Commission is having a special meeting tomorrow morning. The mayor, Marie Williams, and myself will all be attending. And to be discussed there is the possibility of them increasing their contribution to the city and allowing greater flexibility on how we utilize those dollars so that we could utilize them potentially for operating budget items. And we have received a legal opinion from our city attorney that certain labor hours can be, that those dollars can be used to pay for certain labor hours, such as labor hours involved in special events in the community that draw tourism, park maintenance, trail maintenance, things like that.
So not the 12th, but the 5th.
They have two meetings, so tomorrow is a special meeting specifically about the budget. Then the normal standard meeting is the second Tuesday of the month, which is next,
The 12th.
And that is their standard agenda, but they do have a specialist from the state supposedly coming. I don't know if that's been confirmed. That is their standing meeting is on the 12th, but tomorrow is a special meeting specifically about the budget.
Thanks, Doug.
To address the concerns that the council asked the mayor and the staff to follow up with them to try to rework the numbers.
7:30.
7:30.
And then the only other thing I had is just to mention that Gulf Road roundabout is now substantially complete. It's been like that for about 2 weeks now. It was done approximately 2 weeks ahead of schedule. The contractor earned $18,500 out of the potential $20,000 incentive for finishing early, and so far it appears to be functioning very well, and we're real happy with the project.
There were uniform, not police uniform, but blaze orange workers there. Look like they're doing surveys. Were they doing some traffic studies today or something, or?
That might have been the engineers out there doing like punch list inspection to talk about the different outstanding issues that just still need to be cleaned up.
And then there are going to be trees and shrubs planted, correct?
In the spring.
Yeah.
In the spring.
So that is in the capital budget for
Right.
the
That's
council
what I
to
just wanted to
approve.
remind folks. It's not just going to sit there the way it is. I think it's beautifully finished. It just needs to,
A little
get some
green.
Absolutely. That's it for my report.
Great, thank you. I have a clerk's report here, discussion and action on the voucher list.
Move to approve the voucher list.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Council request for future agenda items. Any requests for future agenda items? If you don't have them tonight, please get them to staff when you have them. Number 8, correspondence, cooperative agreement between Merton and Oconomowoc. And seeing nothing else on the agenda, there is no further business. So we are now adjourned at 8:12.